Hello, everyone. Welcome to the final presentation of Hack3D. My name is Gary Mack, the lead organizer of the competition and a PhD student here at New York University. And my research focuses on looking into security for digital manufacturing. Hack3D is a red team, blue team challenge to showcase the cybersecurity issues in digital manufacturing process of 3D printing. I would like to thank the following organizers behind Hack3D that made it all possible. Professor Nikhil Gupta and Professor Ramesh Karri act as the faculty lead. Dr. Hammond Pearce is the postdoc lead, and special thanks to the National Science Foundation for sponsoring our competition. Today, you will watch each finalist team present their solution to the final challenge to 3 industry professionals who have joined as judges for Hack3D. I would like to first invite Michael Burke, the Director of Product Design and Definition from ShadowShifts, to introduce himself and share with us a few words.
Hi, everybody. My name is Michael Bork, not Burke, that's fine. Yeah, I have over 36 years of manufacturing experience from subtractive machining to additive machining. Additive printing, rather. I've been in the 3D printing space for 10 years. I work at Stratasys. We invented 3D printing, FDM printing 32 years ago. And it's my pleasure to spend all day designing 3D printers and 3D printing software for the industry.
Thank you, Michael. Next, I'd like to welcome Lisa Burke, the Product Manager of Additive Manufacturing from Caterpillar.
Hello, good morning. I have worked with Caterpillar for over 20 years and most recently in the last 5 in the additive manufacturing space. We are a supplier to our own company. We make production parts for Caterpillar to use in additive manufacturing, and that's one of my responsibilities there. So it's good to be here. Excited to do this today with everybody.
Thank you, Lisa. And for our third judge, I'd like to welcome Andrew Holliday, Lead R&D Engineer of Manufacturing from Carpenter Technology Corporation.
Hey, I'm Andrew Holliday. I work at Carpenter Technology Corporation. We're about a 130-year-old steel company. Actually had the original patent on stainless steel. And I'm part of our team. I'm our lead R&D engineer for moving into the additive manufacturing space. And what I do is mainly process and materials development for metal additive manufacturing.
Thank you, Andrew. And before we begin with the presentation, I just want to show everybody in the audience that are joining us for the first time what the Hack3D final challenge is all about. So for the final challenge, each team is given the digital model of a fidget spinner. The fidget spinner features 8 bubbles that are pressable. So one of the first tasks for the finalist teams is to determine whether which of the 8 bubbles have been pressed or not, and these are assumed to be made out of a silicone bubble material that can be pressed and popped into. The second task finalist teams have to look into is for each of the 8 bubbles, which color does each of the bubble represent? It is a given that 7 of the 8 bubbles represent one color from the rainbow, and there is a last color that is a mystery color left for the students to decode. So with that said, I would like to first invite our first team, Team 3D AD, a team from NYU Abu Dhabi, featuring Yusuf, Cornelius, and Juan. So Team 3D AD, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Good day, everyone. We are Team 3D AD, and today we'll be presenting about the observations that we made and the conclusions we made about the colors and whether a bubble has been pressed or not. And the overview of my presentation is going to be about, first of all, we're going to talk about the colors of the bubbles, and then we're going to talk about whether they've been pressed or not. To start with the colors of the bubbles.
Cornelius,
yeah?
May I interrupt you for a second? Could you please give us a brief introduction of your team, like what education stage are you at and what institutions do you come from?
Okay, I'm sorry about that. I'm Cornelius. I'm a senior in NYU Abu Dhabi studying civil engineering. And my partner Yusuf is a senior at NYU Abu Dhabi studying electrical engineering. Thank you. I'm going to proceed with the presentation by talking about the colors that we think each bubble should be, and I'm going to go in the alphabetical order from A to H. Now for bubble A, we found this surface body in there that had an inscription FFA 500, and that's hex code. And hex for FFA 500 is orange, so we concluded that bubble A must be orange. For bubble B, there was another surface body, but then on the inscription on it was AES 256 ECB encryption, which means that we need a 256-bit secret key. And we had on the last line of the bubble, you can see there is a string there that looks like nonsense, but then it's actually something that's been encrypted. So we set out to finding the secret key. Now, if you look at the step file in a notepad, like a text editor, you'd realize that there is the hashtag over here, which states at New York University Hack3D 12 November 2021. When you count the number of letters or symbols in there, that's 32. And if you assume that every symbol has 8 bits and you multiply, you're going to have 256 bits. So that kind of matches the length of the secret key that we want. So we tried that. And what happened was that we found that when we decrypted the string that was given, it says I have a wavelength of 400. Now we look at the color spectrum. The color band that has a wavelength of 400 is violet. So we concluded that B must be violet. Now for C, there was a body in the bubble once again, but then this body had an origin and it had a coordinate that says SV, which we figured out later. And then at the top there was an inscription called hue with an arrow for an angle. So what we did was we measured the dimension of the height and then the X value, which is the V. And what we found was that it's 0.85 and 0.4, and then the hue angle was 174. Now, if we have a hue and then a saturation and a value, that's a HSV color scale. So what we did was we just went online, got a tool for finding what color is going to be based on the numbers that we have here. Now, the saturation and the value are supposed to be in percentages. So what we did was we converted the decimal to percentages, and that became 40% and 85%. Now, putting it into the tool online, what came out is we realized that the bubble C is supposed to be color cyan. Now, for bubble D, we had what we saw was logos of famous companies and some tools. Now, the companies, we could look at Twitter and then Dropbox, and then there was Windows, which is software. And what we did was we went to the official sites of all these and we looked at the official colors that are supposed to be there. Now, the recurring theme in here was that all of the logos had a predominant color of blue. So our conclusion was that blue should be the color for bubble D. Now, to continue, I'm going to invite my friend Yusuf to take over and talk about how we determine the colors of the rest.
Yeah. Good day, everyone. My name is Yusuf, and I'm an electrical engineer. I'm studying electrical engineering at New York University, Abu Dhabi. So for bubble E, inside bubble E, we had a surface that had two 56-bit digits, and in between the two 56-bit digits was this XOR encryption. And well, this is kind of screaming to us that take an XOR operation between the two 56 bits, and we did that. And then we got out another 56-bit binary digit. And to make this XOR 56-bit binary digits intelligible to us, we converted it to ASCII. And then the ASCII representation we got out was 255,00. And if you're looking for a color and you get this, the first thing that comes to your mind is RGB color code. And this is the RGB color code for red, and we concluded that bubble E must have the red color. For bubble F, on the surface of bubble F were these kind of visually identifiable trademark logos for certain companies, McDonald's, Caterpillar Incorporations, Best Buy, and Shell. So what we did was to go on the internet, find the original trademark logo and symbols for these companies. We put them together. And again, if you're looking for a color, what jumps at you first is the similarities between all these things is the color yellow. And we therefore concluded that bubble F must have the color yellow. Moving on to bubble G, on bubble G, as you can see on the left, were certain inscriptions of some words like environmental, freshness, energy, particularly these 6 words you see on the right. And again, if you're looking for a color, the first thing we're thinking is environmental, freshness, energy, growth has to do with like plants, green, but we didn't stop at that. And to find more evidence, what we did was to copy all these words with spaces in between them, put it in Google, in the Google search bar, clicked and carried out the search, and lo and behold, we got a lot of articles talking about how these words actually connected with the color green, and therefore we concluded that, well, bubble G must have a green color. And finally, for bubble age, inside bubble age, as you can see in the middle image, is this well, like bubble, or this box cloud, if you like. And so we're thinking, well, there must be some form of data embedded in this bubble cloud. And even before trying to, you know, systematically get out the information, what we just did was to take a smartphone. So we're thinking some form of QR code or some form of, I don't know, something. So we took our smartphone, just placed it in front of the screen, the camera in front of the screen, and just kept rotating the box cloud. And very soon, very well, you get out the camera identified that, oh, you have a data matrix that says I am indigo. And well, this is kind of, you don't argue with the self-proclaiming evidence from the data matrix saying I'm indigo and concluded bubble age must be indigo. And on the left, you can actually see this is like the well-structured, extracted data matrix, and it's easily identifiable by the L pattern on the left and bottom corner. And so this is the final fidget spinner with the silicon bubbles colored with the colors we concluded they must have.
Okay, now we are going to talk about how we determine whether a bubble must have been pressed or not. Now, to do this, we once again had to look for clues. But then the clue that we found was on the side of the fidget spinner, there were 3 layers of, it was like dashes. But then those dashes, we tried to translate them in the codes that we know, but we found out they didn't really mean anything to us. So what we did was to look inside the model. And what we found out, we found 3 plates. So we named them a top plate, bottom plate, and then the middle plate. Now on the top plate, we had 1s and 0s with a power button, as you can see. On the same was on the bottom plate, but on the middle plate there was a line and then there were arrows. What we think was that we had to align the lines on the top plate and then the bottom plate to the lines on the middle plate, based on the fact that there were arrows on each face of the middle plate. And Yusuf is going to talk about how we did that.
So this is kind of like a visual representation of what we did. And as you can see now, this you're looking at all the plates from the top view, and you can see you have like 3 different lines of symmetry, which shows that those lines are not actually they are not aligned. So if you play now, and so what we did was to seek to align those lines using the information from the arrow that were in the middle plate. As you can see, so we turned the top plate by 90 degrees and the bottom plate by 315 degrees. And you see now all the lines of symmetry actually aligned. And now each of the silicon bubble holes has either a 1 or a 0 in front of it. So what we concluded was that the silicon bubbles that had a 1 in front of them were pressed, and those that had 0s in front of them were not pressed.
Now, from all that we've talked about since the beginning of the presentation, we concluded that A must be orange, B must be violet, C cyan, D blue, E red, F yellow, G green, and H is indigo. And we also concluded that B, C, and F must have been the ones that have been pressed. And if you look to the right of the screen, you could see a visual representation of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Team 3DAD. Now I'll open up the floor to judges if anyone have questions for our team.
Yeah, I'll go. First of all, thank you. This is a very good presentation, how you arrived at these answers. Can you tell me, there's 3 of you, so how did you work together? Did one of you take certain aspects of the project, or how did you collaborate to come to this?
Okay, I can take this. So normally what we do is that we don't want to be influenced by what the other person is going to say. So when the challenge was released, what we do is for the first day, we look at it individually, and then we look at every clue. And then on the second day, what we do is we come together and then we talk about our clues, just so that it's like everybody comes with something original, as compared to if I start telling Yusuf that I think this, then he might start thinking along those lines, and that might not be the case if he had looked at it individually before we started talking. So that's how we collaborated with like solving this.
And when did you know you were done? Right at the last minute, or you finished it a day early, or?
Oh, so we were done on the day of the submission, but we're still looking at some other possibilities, which we could talk about it right now, but we're still looking at some other possibilities, although we knew that, or we had concluded this earlier, we are looking at some other possibilities for other clues. So we waited until we were sure that this was what we wanted to present, and all the other clues weren't really making like any sense to us. And from there, they submitted, yeah.
And also, if Cornelius, we have like, some of the things we also looked at, like other things we considered. If you just go to the next slide. So we looked at this, there were like these kind of bands of colors that looked like register color coding. We were looking at that and trying to extract information from that as well. If you go to the next slide as well. Yeah, we looked at all the bubbles and we're trying to like, look at their mass. Some of them were massless, some of them had masses, their surface areas and their volumes. And also we're just trying to get some other information even from that. So after making our initial conclusions, we're still trying to kind of extract more information and see if we'd get even some other information that would corroborate what we've already concluded before. And yeah, so that was basically what we're doing during the final day and until the end. Yeah.
We still have time for one more question. Does Lisa or Andrew have any questions for our team?
I don't have any questions, but thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
None on my end either. Very clear.
All right, well, I'll ask another question since we got it right. What tools did you use to derive these things? CAD tools, mathematical tools? Can you just cite those right now?
Our main CAD tool was SolidWorks. So we use SolidWorks and then Notepad a lot because all these files are normally written in text. So you could just look into it. And normally in the header file, for instance, the header doesn't really affect what's going to be in the card. So you look in the header, maybe there might be some clues there, those kind of things here. And I think another thing that we normally don't really look at, but then it's important, is smartphones, because these days phones can realize any form of code, even if you don't know about the code. If you're able to rotate it to a certain specific angle or orientation is supposed to be, the phone might pick it up. So that's was a good tool for us in figuring it out. Yeah.
And Google
and
too.
Also
and Google, yeah.
Google was very important. So Google was also a very important tool for doing things like XOR. When we wanted to do the XOR operation, just copy the things, put it in an XOR online tool, and then we got that out. And just in line with what Cornelius was saying about this smartphone detecting codes. So even for instance, we didn't need to exactly align the box cloud perfectly, because with things like error correcting codes, even if it's not perfectly aligned, and even if you mix a couple of bits, the smartphone will still be able to read it. So that was smartphones, Google, and CAD tools. Yeah, those were like the.
That must have been very exciting when you found that.
Oh yeah.
Nice job, guys. Really good.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yusuf and Cornelius. Next, I'd like to welcome Gladson, Akshay, Pratisha, and Sumanti from Team Virtuosos. And they are a team from Maharashtra Institute of Technology from India. And they will be next to present on their final challenge. So team, please.
Hi everyone, this is Team Virtuosos. We are a group of 4 BTech students from Maharashtra Institute of Technology, Aurangabad. My team member names are Akshay Sonone, Gladson Thomas, Pratiksha Sumati Ladane, and I am Pratiksha Davade. So we were given a model of fidget spinner with a pressable silicon bubble. The task was to find out the colors of the silicon bubbles and check whether the bubbles were pressed or not. Now, we were given a step file of the model and the document file containing the problem statement. Now we will see the process. So we use STP Viewer to open the model. We also converted the file to GLTF to open it in Blender, as we were acquainted with its user interface. So when we opened the model in STP Viewer, we saw the label A to H. Beside every bubble, we also found that every bubble had some kind of clue on them or inside them. Also, we noticed some pointers in the center and some arrows also. So we thought that we should start with finding the colors. Now over to you, Akshay.
Okay, Pratiksha. For bubble A, so we started with bubble A. Upon closer inspection, we found that it had some inscription on it. It read FF A500. We realized that it was X of the color, so we put in the online picker color, and it turned out to be orange. For bubble C, we did not find any clue on the surface. We hit on the outer structure. It revealed a semi-cylinder-like structure inside, but we did not find any clue on it. But we were on Blender. But we checked it in Stepper Viewer. We noticed some text on it. First, we saw that line behind it, some form of an angle. So we superimpose an image of the angles and into find angle. It turned out to be 175 degree. So we were pretty confident that this could be a reflection of the HSP system. So we searched for any more text on the structure. We found S and V written. It was given as in box, and it kind of looked like graph. So we mapped it by propagation, and it was 40% of on x-axis, which was considered as a saturation, and 85% on the y-axis, which was considered as y-axis. Using all three parameters, hue, saturation, and value, we found the color of to be somewhat like faint cyan, specifically Bermuda, more specifically #83DA-D2 at its hex core. For bubble D, upon inspection, we found 4 logos in it: Bluetooth, Twitter, Dropbox, and Window. In all these, there was one parameter common, its color, which was blue. So we figured out that should be blue color. For bubble E, on opening bubble E, we found a tablet-like structure inside. On it were some binary number and text XOR. So we XOR the two numbers, and the result when converted to the ASCII code turned out to be the RGB value of the color to 5500, which was actually red color. Over to you, Sumati.
Okay, so next is bubble F. Bubble F was kind of similar to bubble D, as it had 4 logos here too. The parameter which was noticed to be common was its color, which was yellow. Next bubble G. For this bubble had some clues on its structure, so we wrote down all the words. We found that all were in some sense a reference to the color green. For bubble H, it had few cubes in it, all spread around, but we assume it to be some kind of matrix, maybe a QR code or data matrix. So we checked it from all the angles, which made some sense, and took screenshots of all them. Then we inverted its color and did some labeling so that mobile apps could identify them better and check each one with an app. One of them was detected by the app. It was decoded as I'm Indigo. So Indigo was fixed for this bubble. For bubble B, we had some issue with this one. The text above helped us realize that it was a AES 256 ECB encryption, but the key was missing. Sometime later, we found the clue in the header section of the step 5 when we open it in VS Code. But using the secret code, we did not get any meaningful result. So we separated the binary of it in groups of 7. Still, we did not get any usable result. Then we checked for the colors that we found. And based on the problem statement, we knew that we should have all the colors of the rainbow, but only one was missing. So we assumed this one to be the remaining one, and which was violet. So next, over to you, Gladstone.
Okay, so we were a little skeptical about this one as we did not find any conclusive evidence, but as we were running out of time, we fixed the one which we thought was most logical to us. So when we examined the body, it had 0 degrees written on 2 sides. One of them was rotated, so it was reversed when we looked from above. And we also saw some binary numbers on the body, and it was in 2 layers. And when we looked from above, the one of the 0 degree was correctly oriented, and since the binary was in 2 layers, we looked at the binary which was on top now. We noticed that there were some arrows in the center, so we followed that direction, and so starting from 0 degree, we got 0, 1, 0, 0 on the top layer. And then we rotated the view, and from the bottom view, the other 0 degree was correctly oriented. So we looked at the bottom binary layer, which was now on top. Now starting from the correctly oriented 0, we following the arrow, we noted the binary sequence to be 0, 1, 0, 1. Now converting them to decimal, we got 4 on the top layer and 5 on the bottom layer. And since 4th and 5th letter are D and E respectively, we assume the D and E bubbles to be pressed. So there were some clues which were remaining, which we found that there were some clues, but we did not get to the end. So it was one of these clocks, as it looked like a clock, but since it had similar lengths of the hands, we were stuck in that. And the use of 2 arrows and this box inside a box and 3 color bands, we tried to figure out, but it looked like we were losing time on that one, so that's why we skipped that one and this rectangle tabs. So that was our so thank you. So we are open to questions.
Thank you so much, team. And now, if any judges have any questions, feel free.
Yeah, it seems like you use a lot of deductive reasoning regarding choosing both the colors and your whether they're pressed or not. Can you talk a little bit about the team's communication when making those decisions?
Yeah, so we, like the previous team also, we started out individually, each member, but after some time, since we were stuck, we all joined together on a meet and we started thinking about it together. So if someone gets an idea, it will be inspiration to all, and everyone will start to get some ideas, and that's how we can continue. So we figured out that we should all connect together on a team. We did it on Google Meet, and we all tried to find answers together, and sometimes we used individually and sometimes we did it together. That's how we did.
Thanks.
Here's one question I may have for the team. Specifically with Bubble H, when looking at the data matrix, the first thing that you saw was this cloud of boxes. When the team saw that, did they already realize that there was a QR code or data matrix embedded in them, or perhaps prior knowledge of looking at some research that made the team conclude to look for some scannable?
Yeah, we looked at all the previous questions, and we knew that there had to be one QR code or something in this one. So we were waiting for that one, and when we saw these cubes, we realized that this should be the one which was having a QR code or that data matrix.
I just have a quick question. How many people were on the team? I missed that. 4 people spoke, but were there more than 4 people on the team?
No, actually, it was just 4.
Just 4. Okay. Thanks. Nice job.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, team.
Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Great job.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
For the next presentation, I'd like to welcome team We Did Not Think This Far Ahead to introduce themselves. This team consists of Evan and Isha from New York University and Alvin from Stockton University. So if you guys would give a brief introduction about yourself, and you can take away with the presentation.
Hi, we are team We Did Not Think This Far Ahead. Is my mic unmuted? I believe my mic is unmuted. I am not a fan of Zoom. Yes, it is. So respectfully, gentle viewer, with our team name being We Did Not Think This Far Ahead, our team name would only be relevant if we actually made it to the finals. So did we really not think that far ahead? I'm gonna let you decide that one. We are composed of 3 individuals. My best friend's younger brother, Alvin Hune, he's a bachelor's in science, computer science from Stockton University. My cousin sister's former ex-college roommate, she's actually my machine learning colleague, Disha Lamba, and my friends call me Ethan Lara. So already by now, you've heard 2 other groups talk. So by now you already have an idea of what the objective is, what the different type of bubbles are, whether the bubbles, the silicon bubbles are pressed or not. We also included a what things we tried and failed portion. However, with that being said, we are doing our best to condense 3 days into 8 to 10 minutes. And quite frankly, there's no way to do that. It's impossible. We tried a lot of things that are not in our presentation. These are included in our final submission. And I really respectfully implore the judges to view our final submission, because that's going to go into the nitty-gritty details that we're not going to cover here. So at this point, one thing our team didn't do, we knew the colors were the colors of the rainbow and one mystery color. While everybody has an idea of what the colors of the rainbow are, we all went to kindergarten, we can all probably pass Are You Smarter Than a 5th Grader on the Fox channel. We did not look up the colors of the rainbow until relatively the end, because we didn't want to get a confirmation bias. And frankly, we didn't have any problem with that, so that's good. We're going to split this up. My colleague Disha is going to talk about the colors. Alvin's going to talk about whether they're pressed or not, and you'll be hearing from me in between all of this. So at this time, I'd like to ask my colleague Disha to talk about the bubbles.
So we'll first start with the merciful bubbles. First bubble being bubble A. In the bubble A, we could clearly see that there's a 6-digit code, and on Googling, we found out that it's a hex code, and the hex code is for the color orange. So therefore, we concluded that bubble A is orange. Next, we have bubble D. We could clearly see that it had 4 symbols in it, 4 logos basically, and the 4 logos were of Windows, Bluetooth, Twitter, and Dropbox. And the common trait among these 4 logos that they had a color of blue. Therefore, we concluded that bubble D is blue. Next, we had bubble F. It's quite similar to the bubble D, the idea we had there. So same here also, we had 4 logos. The 4 logos were of Caterpillar, McDonald's, Best Buy, and Shell. And the common trait among these colors was that the background was of color yellow. Next, we have bubble G. Bubble G comprises 6 words, and the 6 words were on Googling. We found out that these 6 words are associated with the color green. We actually found a blog post which listed all the words which are associated with the color green. Next, we have bubble B. On opening the SHA file in the notepad, we found out the secret key, and the secret key was New York University Hack3D 12 November 2021. And then on using an online tool, when we put the encryption key and the secret key, and then we decrypted it, we got the value as I have a wavelength of 400 nanometer. And on Googling, we found out that the color violet has a wavelength on nanometer. Another hint that we have of bubble B was that the secret key has New York University in it, and the NYU's official color is violet. So yeah, for bubble B, we had 2 hints which directed towards that bubble B might be color violet. Next, we have bubble C. In bubble C, we got 2 hints. First, that it has a hue, and when we measured its angles, it turned out to be 174 degrees. And the second hint, when we measured the point SV from the origin, we found out the values to be 0.04 and 0.085. And then on using an online tutorial, and we added all these values, we got the color as teal. And seems out this is not a rainbow color. So yeah, bubble C is a mystery bubble. Next, we have bubble E. In bubble E, we had 2 binary values and then XOR. When we operated XOR operation on these and converted them to ASCII values, we got the values as 255, 0, 0. And that's equivalent to 100% red, 0% green, and 0% blue. So yeah, bubble E is green.
Right. Okay, so I had some previous exposure to previous year's fact patterns, and in one of the previous year's fact patterns, they had a series of cells that you had to rotate to just find the QR code. So when I saw these 140 cubes, I immediately thought QR code. Maybe I'm going to have to hide some cubes and create the QR code. So very early on, I used the look at tool within Fusion 360. And the look at tool gave me this Tetris-like shape you see to your left. At this point, I previously had exposure to data matrix, so I immediately thought data matrix. And very early on, we figured out bubble H was indigo. So here's our final conclusion. We have void GBiv plus teal. I am colorblind. Teal looks like cyan to me. We're not going there. We're not going there. The colors that are in color are the colors we found actual hex codes for. The colors that are not in color, we tried finding hex codes, whether it's going to the patent office to look up the actual hex code for Twitter, or trying to look at the source code for green. But ultimately, the ones we have in color are the ones we have hex codes for. At this point, I'm going to pass it to my colleague, Alvin, who's going to talk about how we figured out whether the silicon bubbles were pressed or not.
Thanks a lot, Evan. So yes, I'll be talking about the various clues that we found in trying to figure out which buttons were actually being pressed. So let's go to the next slide. So the first thing that we noticed is there seemed to be two layers, both with 4 numerals each. They were both in binary. There was a total of 3 ones and 5 zeros. So with that being, 8 numerals and 8 bubbles, we concluded that this is probably related to determining which ones were being pressed. And so next question then was how to actually align that, because as you can see from the left side image, they're overlapping currently. And so the next context clue we found was the power symbol and rotation arrows. And so with the arrows pointing in a specific direction, we figured that's going to indicate the directionality of the rotation that needs to be applied. The next question then is how much of a rotation to apply and to which layer. And so to determine how much rotation, we looked at each individual arrow. The shorter top side arrow is actually a little bit more than 45 degrees, but under 90 degrees. So if we were to translate that to an angle, that's going to not align one of the layers. And so we figured there has to be some other clue. And by examining closely, we found that there was a box with a right angle indicator. So we concluded for that arrow, at least, that should probably be 90 degrees. And so also by measuring the angle of the bottom arrow, the bottom longer arrow, that came out to be about 315 degrees. And so that did align the numerals with the bubbles. And so the next question then was which arrow belonged to which layer. We compared the vertices of each arrow and we found that the longer arrow was about 4.39 centimeters on the z-axis in terms of height, and the shorter arrow of the box was about 4.44 centimeters in terms of height. And so being that there was a height difference, we thought the longer of the two must belong to the bottom layer of numerals, and the shorter of the two must belong to the top one. After rotating that, we found that another context clue that kind of helped verify this conclusion, the power symbols that belong to each layer ended up aligning. So that was a bit of a coincidence, and we felt that that was some confirmation, gave us a bit more confidence in what we came to conclude. And so the conclusion then is with B, C, and F being the 3 pressed bubbles.
So as I discussed earlier, we tried a lot of different things and we felt like we must have missed a context clue, because there is a little bit of a leap of faith in determining whether a 0 means not pressed and a 1 means pressed. Now, there's positive logic, 0 means no, 1 means yes, and negative logic, 0 means yes, 1 means no. So we felt like there had to be a context clue, because while the positive logic is the conventional standard used in most engineering and computer science, negative logic shows up. I'm an electrical and computer engineer, and I've seen negative logic, right? So I felt like we must have missed the context clue. So we tried a lot of different things. Like one of the previous groups talked about, we noticed the black and red stripes. Again, that's in our PDF we submitted. So what are some things we tried? We tried importing the step file as a mesh to try to see if there's any hidden information when it was just one single mesh body. We couldn't find anything. We then took that mesh, saved as an STL, opened up in Kira, still found no information. Then we sliced the STL in Kira because the last fact pattern, the qualifier round, involved slicing. When we sliced, now this model is not meant for additive manufacturing at this stage. Absolutely not. But when we sliced it, we noticed these weird problem areas around bubbles A, B, and bubbles G and F. And we said, well, okay, maybe there's some hidden information in those areas. Maybe if we use a cross-sectional view, maybe if we use a different way to view those areas, we might find that missing context clue. Found nothing. Finally, no one on this team is a mechanical engineer, and no one on this team has had exposure to step files before. But step files use numbers to map to objects, right? Or bodies. And we said, well, maybe if we can figure out the 8 numbers that map to the 8 bubbles, we can find a context clue. But how would we go about finding this? So we tried to make the bubbles all red, save this as a new step file, then take the old step file, cross-reference it with the new step file to determine the 8 numbers that corresponded to the bubbles. However, the new step file was in a completely different order than the old step file. Fusion 3, the show organizers, based on the metadata, definitely used SolidWorks. We used Fusion 360. So we're assuming it was a difference of how these two programs save step files. So in conclusion, we could not cross-reference step files. That is our presentation. Thank you so much for being judges. Thank you so much to the other competitors. Thank you to my colleagues for putting up with me for almost 2 weeks. At this time, if you have any questions for us, we'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you, team. We did not think this far ahead, and congratulations for getting this far ahead. So now, any questions from the judges?
Right. I really like this presentation. Thank you.
I have a question. How confident are you in that you got this right?
I guess I'll take that answer. The fact that our colleagues in this competition have come to identical conclusions is very reassuring. Again, that context clue of positive, negative logic. Again, the power symbols, if you go on Wikipedia, people talk about how power symbols are zeros and ones, and that is positive logic. But if you actually look more into power symbols, that might not be where the inspiration for a power symbol originally came from. So while there is a slight context clue with the power symbols and positive logic, it's that positive negative logic that has kept me awake a little bit at night. Ultimately, however, I think our team, my colleagues are incredibly gifted individuals that I'm very fortunate to be working with. I think we came to the correct conclusion, yes.
Great, thanks. Nice job.
Thank you, team. Next up, I'd like to introduce Team Super User, consistent of Sudhanshu, Nikita, Veba, and Svarva. So take it away, team, with a quick introduction, and you can begin your presentation.
Thank you, Gary. So we'll share our presentation. So hello everyone, I'm Vibha and I'm from Team Super User, and we'll be presenting our final presentation of the solutions to the final challenge. So my colleagues are Sudhanshu Mishra, who's from IIT Kharagpur, Nikita Rautela from MNIT Jaipur, Swara Mehta from IIT Goa, and I'm Vibha from NITK. We are all mech majors. So the task that was given to us was, we were given a step file of a fidget spinner, and we had two questions to answer. One is to find the color associated with each of the 8 bubbles, and to find whether each of the 8 bubbles is pressed or not. So this is the result we get, and we have found out the colors for each of the letters and whether they are being pressed or not with proper explanation, which will be presenting. So next is the step files that was given to us. So when we open the step files, there are a lot of clues in it. So in the first image, you can clearly see all the reference letters. So each ball has a reference letter. And in the second one, we used a wireframe model so that we could see all the edges, which you wouldn't otherwise be able to see. So we can see all the clues at once. And in the third image, which is purely for representation purpose, we have isolated all balls and randomly assigned a color, just so that we could reduce the opacity and see the hints that were present in it. So coming to the first question, finding the color of each bubble, we were already given a head start that there are 7, the 7 colors are the rainbow colors, and 1 color is not a rainbow color. So keeping that in mind, we start off, and the first ball, which is A. So as everyone has mentioned, so we can see that there is a hexagon, and inside that you find a string FFA 500. So FFA 500, when you see it, it very much looks like a hex code, a hexadecimal string, because the alphabets don't cross F. And since it is in a hexagon, that's a further confirmation. So when you look it up, it is representing color orange. So that explains the color of A. So moving on to the next ball, that is B. So in ball B, we have certain text embedded, that is AES 256 ECB encryption. So now AES ECB encryption is one of the standard encryption models, and below you have a really long string. So that is the string you get post encryption. And since it's given 256, it means that it is a 256-bit encryption. There are 126 and other combinations too. So for 256 bits encryption, you need a 32-bit key, and the only hint we are given is a hash. So when you open the step file in a text editor, so we open it on a notepad, and right in the beginning, you see file name, and in file name, you have hashtag equals New York University Hack3D 12 Nav 2021. So this is a perfect 32-bit string. So when you use that as a key, you will get, when you use it to decrypt, you'll get, I have a wavelength of 400 nanometers, and we all know that the color with 400 nanometers wavelength is violet. So coming to the next ball, C. So in the ball C, there is a semicircular prism that's embedded, and on one of the flat faces, you have origin and you have a coordinate point S, V. So being engineers, the natural instinct is to find the S and V coordinate. So when we measure it, we get in centimeters, we get 0.04 and 0.085 centimeters. On one of the semicircular faces, you have the words HUE, hue, and an angle. So the angle measures to be 174 degrees. So with hue, S, and V, it is a HSV color format, which is another standard representation of colors, where hue is represented in terms of degrees from 0 to 360. So using these values from a color picker, you get the color to be soft cyan. So this soft cyan is the color which is not a rainbow color. And coming to D, so in D, the balls, you find several logos, popular brand logos that are embedded. So that is Twitter, Dropbox, Bluetooth, and Windows. And when you look at it, it's filled with blue. So this ball had to be blue. So coming to the next clue, that's E. So here you have 2 binary strings separated with XOR. So XOR is a binary operation So we extracted the two strings and performed a binary operation, and whatever result we get, we convert the binary operation to an ASCII representation with base 256. So that time you get 255,0,0, which looks like the standard representation for colors, that is the RGB value, where you represent colors with primary colors. And RGB, you have R value as 255 and GNB is 0, so it's clearly red. So that solves for this one. So for the next one, F, it's same as what we saw for blue, that you have popular logos embedded in it. So the companies are McDonald's, Caterpillar, Shell, and Best Buy. So the common color is yellow. We initially had considered it could be either red too, because of the logo, because red is also associated with McDonald's and Shell. But however, we were sure that the previous one is red. And here we already found that cyan is the 8th new color, so it cannot be black, so it had to be yellow. So moving on next to our step 5. So we have for G. So for ball G, you have a bunch of words in it, such as calm, envy, growth, freshness, environment, and energy. And I'm fond of literature, so the moment I saw these words, I knew that the color associated is green. So this was pretty easy and straightforward. So coming to the last clue, that is, we had a cube cloud inside the ball, and what I initially expected was our team was hoping to find a QR code. So we were rotating the cube cloud on Fusion 360 and trying to find a suitable arrangement. So when we did that, at one point, all the cubes aligned perfectly, the edges, everything aligned perfectly. So we switched the mode from wireframe to shaded with edges, and we got this. So we took a screenshot and searched it using a data matrix reader, and it says that I am indigo. So this is indigo. So with this, we complete the identification of colors, which is the first part of the task. So from bottom, you can see A is orange, then we have violet, cyan, blue, red, yellow, green, and indigo. So all the colors were identified this way. So apart from this, next we found out many other clues in the model. So some of the clues that we found out is in the third image over here, you can see that in the main fidget spinner body, there are 4 layers. And in the 4 layers, when you don't separate the layers and look at them from top view, you can see 3 diametrical lines that are not aligning. And you can also see the letters O and I. And apart from that, you can see 2 arrow marks. One is a longer arrow mark and one is a shorter one. The longer arrow mark measures 315 degrees, whereas the shorter one, at the trailing end, you have a rectangle and a small cube in it. This is a standard symbol to show perpendicularity, and how we use this as a clue, we'll explain it later. So moving to the next clues that were found in the model. So there are also, as I told, there are 4 layers. There are also 2 power symbols that can be found. The power symbols are not aligned. Initially, we thought this could be a clock, but then we realized this cannot be a clock because if it was a clock, the hands should be of different lengths. So it was clearly a power symbol. And after that, we found that in different layers, you have O's and I's, and the sizes of O's are same, but in the sizes of I in one layer is slightly smaller than the other. And we think that this could probably be a slight error while making the model, since this doesn't really give a clue to anything. And the other clue is there are 3 bands that can be found on the centerpiece. And the 3 bands are in the color black, black, and red. And 3-band resistors are very common. And the resistor with the band BBR will give the resistance of 20 ohms. But then we took a much simpler clue for this, that the 3 bands represent 3 bubbles that could have been popped. So we started off the work by hoping to find at least 3 bubbles that were popped. So moving on. So coming to addressing how we find out which bubble is pressed. I hand it over to Nikita, who will be explaining this part.
Thank you, Vibha. So in the second question, we had to find that which bubbles were pressed. Next. So upon viewing the model in wireframe mode, we found out that there were several overlapping information present. So we rather sectioned the model into 4 layers. So the first layer gives us information of the alphabets which are assigned to different spheres. The second layer gives us information, it has different symbols. It has symbols which resemble to O and I. So there are 3 O's and 1 I, a power button and a diagonal line. This is when we view it from the top. Now the third layer, when viewed from the top, shows a solid arrow, which is the smaller one, which represents a 90-degree rotation. A diagonal line is also represented in the third line, and on one side of the line, there is a mention 0 degree is mentioned when viewed from the top as well as from the bottom side. So this indicated us that it was a reference line for the fidget spinner. There is also a longer arrow which is dotted since it is being viewed from the top side. If you view it from the bottom side, then it would be a solid arrow which is of angle 315 degrees as mentioned before in the presentation. Now the fourth layer is quite similar to the second one, the difference being that it has 2 I's and 2 O's, and if we compare them, then the angle or the orientation of the power key button as well as the diagonal is different, and it is dotted if we see it from the top, but if we view it from the bottom, it will be a solid line. Now, upon rotating the second layer by 90 degrees, as mentioned in the layer 3, which is a solid arrow of 90-degree turn, we get the orientation which is presented on the right side. Similarly, we rotated layer 4, but this time we rotated it by 315 degrees because in the layer 3, it was mentioned that the arrow had a direction and angle of 315 degrees, and we found another orientation of the fidget spinner. Now we overlap the both results. So after spinning the 2 layers and overlapping them, we found out that there were 8 symbols, or each sphere had a symbol designated to it. We had 3 I's and 5 O's. Upon superimposing the 2 layers along with the spinned layers and the reference layers, which were of the alphabets as well as the reference line, we found out that the reference 0-degree line and the power button overlapped perfectly for all the layers, and now we had symbols assigned for each bubbles. We had I's on positions B and C and F, whereas the remaining had O's. For decoding 0 and O symbol, we considered IEC standard convection. So I represents power on, O represents power off, and the power key button hinted towards the standby symbol. So this also confirmed that each layer, that is layer number 2 and 4, were on standby mode. Also, using the logic of binary notation, 0 and I could have been off and on. So finally, we concluded that O would denote off or not popped, whereas I would denote on or popped. Our final results are such that A is orange and is not popped, B is violet and is popped, C is soft cayenne and popped, D is blue, not popped, E is red, not popped, F is yellow and is popped, G is green, not popped, H is indigo, not popped. There were some alternate approaches that we had looked into, which will be further taken by Vibha.
So welcome back again, and coming to the alternate approaches. So here we like to outline some of the approaches that we tried and went ahead before we came to our final approach. So the first one was we treated the I's and O as a Morse code. So the I was treated as a dash and O was treated as a dot. And the power buttons, we use that to take it as a reference as the start of the code. And we went around in the direction of the arrows. So you get in layer 2, you get dash dot dot dot. And in layer 4, you get dash dot dash dot. So the Morse code, when you convert it to alphabets, you get B and C. But unfortunately, although this approach gave us 2 correct answers, this does not satisfy things such as the difference length of arrow marks, the diagonals being different, or the reference line of the diagonals. So we couldn't go ahead with this. And another approach is very similar to the Morse code approach, where instead of taking I and O as dash and dot, we took it as binaries 1 and 0. And similarly, we took the power button as reference and we went in clockwise direction of the arrows for the respective layers. So you get for one of the layers 0, 1, 0, 1. So from binary, when you convert it to decimal, you get 5, which is E, fifth ball. And the other one was we get 0, 0, 0, 1, which again from binary, when you convert it, you get 2, which translates to B ball. So however, here we got one of the answer wrong. And this also does not explain any of the arrow lengths and the power button orientations. So that's why we couldn't go ahead with these two. But apart from these two trials, we also tried other things such as using Cura for slicing the model. And apart from these, using Cura for slicing the model, and also to find the Unicode values for OI, power buttons and all that. But those values also did not get us anywhere. So they were completely failed approaches, whereas these I can call it as more like stepping stones. So after this, this will conclude our presentation, and we are open to questions right now.
Thank you, team.
Thank you.
One question I have is that I've noticed that each member of the team comes from a different university. And were there any difficulty in collaboration or challenges involved? And what were the most efficient way for the team to collaborate to work together on the final challenge?
I'll take this question. So yeah, as you mentioned, we are all from different universities, and the reason we know each other is because of an internship we did in summer at NYU itself. So because of the internship, we came to know each other, and how we collaborated is, one is since we all live in India, so the time zone was not a problem. And the challenge was released at, for our time, it was 10:30 in the morning. So we were all like, in daytime we could work. And how we work is we use Google Docs. So in Google Docs, we create a shared doc for all of us and make a table. So each person, whenever we find any clue, we have 3 columns, basically, one for serial number, clue, and decode and message. So each person, when we find a clue, we put it in the clue column. And if somebody is able to decode that clue, they will put it in the decoded column. So like that, we were working. So we could see that what the other person has found out and what we haven't. So based on that, we were accordingly picking up the challenges, adding down the clues, putting in our ideas. And so initially we worked independently because we also have our university classes going on. So after, in the evening hours, when we had found out substantial resources and all that, we would get on a call on Gmeet and work, and we would decide, we would brainstorm different ideas and all. And after we brainstorm, whoever understood some idea more or feels more inclined to that would work on it. And similarly, this process continues until we arrive at a final answer.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Any additional comments by the judges?
This is really well organized. And so could you clarify, you use Google Drive to share your information, and then did you also have, Zoom meetings together so you could talk to each other?
Yeah. I mean, it's been really great help of, all this shared Google Drives and all to collaborate when you're at home.
I got a question. I only heard 2 people speak, but there's 4 people in your team. What was the rationale? Are they here on the call, or how was their contribution?
Yeah, so 2 of us spoke. The other person is actually presenting the, the whole screen. So, and another person, that is Sudhanshu, he is actually our senior. He's in, he's having his university examinations going on right now. So he has an exam right now, so he cannot join the meet. However, I'd like to very strongly stress on the fact that we all had equal contributions to this. We were all working, continuously and regularly updating and working towards it. He would very much have wanted to be here, but unfortunately he cannot because he has an end semester examination going on.
Okay, thanks. Nice job.
Thank you.
Thank you, Team Super User.
Thank you so much. Thank you for this opportunity.
For the next team, I'd like to welcome Abdul, Dev, Hassan, and Solman from Team Family.py to give them an introduction and their presentation.
Yeah, I'll just share my screen right now. Perfect. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, welcome to our presentation. And as Gary rightfully said, we are Family.py, and we are a group of 4 New York University Abu Dhabi sophomore students. And we're all computer science majors, and we all live together, but we're all trying to get our hands dirty with additive manufacturing and cybersecurity. So this year's Hack3D Fall final challenge was we're given a fidget spinner in a step file, and we're basically supposed to figure out the colors of the different balls on the fidget spinner and which of those balls were pressed. So our go-to software that we used was Fusion 360, but in order to ensure that there was no detail that was missing during the import process into Fusion, we imported the files into a mesh software and then also SolidWorks, just as I mentioned earlier, just to ensure that we were getting everything right on point. And in Fusion 360, transparency is usually our go-to because it reveals certain aspects that would be missed if you don't view it with that level of transparency. Because you could see in transparency mode, you could see a lot of figures and a lot of detail that are generally missed if it's not in that mode. So I'll quickly, without further ado, I'll go on to present how we came up with getting the different colors of the different balls in the fidget spinner, and how we came up with the idea of which of the which of the balls were pressed. So for the first ball, in the first ball, when we viewed it in transparency mode, we saw this 6-digit code in sort of a hexagon. And so it definitely pointed that this 6-digit code was going to be a hex code for a particular color. And so we quickly Googled this 6-digit color, and it was a hex code for the color orange. So we concluded that ball A would definitely be orange. So for ball B was kind of a tricky one because usually in there's usually metadata provided alongside the step file if you view the step file in a text file format. So with this in mind, we view the text for the step file in a text file format, and lo and behold, there was a secret hash which read New York University Hack3D 12 November 2021. So we had this in mind, and we knew that this was going to be useful somewhere along the line. So when we were trying to crack the clue for ball B, there was this encryption on the board that said AES 256 ECB encryption. So we did a Google search, and we found out that it was a means of encryption, and it required a 256 bits input as the secret key. So initially we entered in since the secret key said hash, we entered in hash, but then it prompted us that it needed to be a 256 bits input. So we went back into the text file, and then hash was equal to New York University Hack3D 12 November 2021. So we inputted in that into the secret key, and then we decrypted it, and it gave us this output you see right here, and then we decoded it to plain text. And while decoding, we initially made one of the I's an L, so it wasn't giving us the right input. But then we're able to rectify that problem, and then it's read that I have a wavelength of 400 nanometers. And then a quick Google search of wavelength of which color has a wavelength of 400 nanometers gave us violet. So we then concluded that ball B must also be violet. So then I'll pass it on to Dev, my other teammate, to go on with the presentation.
Yeah, thank you, Abdul. So let's look at ball C now. So this one was really interesting at first. When we looked at it at first glance, we were able to see a strange kind of prism, not a prism, a circular prism. And when we had a closer look at it, we could see there was a 0, 0 point origin, and there was a angle inscribed which said U, and then there was a coordinate point which said HS. So at first we looked into it closely, and we were like, how could we measure this angle? So we selected 3 points, and that came out to be 140. So that indicated that the hue value was 174. And then when looked at the length from the origin point to the coordinate SV, we were able to find out that the distance was 0.04 and 0.885. But we are like, this could refer to the SV value, but on what scale? So if you look at the square from the 0, 0 origin point, we can see that the distance is 0.1 meters. So that shows that we took it as a percentage. So that came out to be 85% and 40%, and that gave us the mystery color, which was cyan or teal, as the other team mentioned. Could be any of those, but this was our mystery color. Moving on to the next bubble, we can see that this is pretty obvious. Big tech companies' logos are here, and you can see them to be blue. And this was evident in the bubble when we saw it in transparent view. So D had to be blue. Moving on to the next bubble, we can see that this was a very interesting one. So as CS majors, this at first to us came at very easy. We are familiar with XOR, so we knew this was a bitwise logic operation. And if you guys don't, if many of you don't know, XOR is when if there's a difference, then only it'll give a 1. So 0, 0 is a 0, and a 1, 1 is also a 0. So by comparing all of them into one statement and calculating this, we came up with the binary 256 code. And when converting this into the text, we came out with 25500, which indicated the RGB value. It was an RGB value, which was red in this case. And moving on to the next one, we can say that you can see that the F is, yeah, this was also just like the blue, very obvious. Big companies like Shell, McDonald's, Best Buy, and Caterpillar, they all have one thing in common, as we all know, as we all can see, yellow. So we knew that ball F also had to be yellow. Now I'd like to pass it on to my teammate Soman for Hassan for further presentation.
All right, thank you, Dev. So the next ball was ball G. In here, we had a bunch of different words inscribed onto the ball. We listed them down. The first color that came to all of our minds instantly was green. But now, obviously, we couldn't go with that. So we took each word, Google search it, got like a color that was usually, inscribed to it, and it all just turned out green. I mean, some of them were obvious. Environment, obviously green, freshness, calm, but then other words like envy, for example, we weren't quite sure if that was going to be green, but it was. So yeah, this ball was pretty simple. The next one, ball H. This was the weird one. So we opened it up, we removed the body layers. We could see that there were separate bodies inside this ball H. Removed the top, and then on the inside we found this a cloud of tiny cubes where we could play around with them, view them from different angles. And then what we saw is that when we aligned it in just the right way, so there were like 6 different permutations in just one of those ways, there was no cube lost. Basically, there were no overlapping cubes. Basically, no data lost. And this also, make nice lines on the sides. When we first saw this mess of cubes, we first, thought it was a QR code. Reconstruction is a kind of a repeated theme in these challenges, but over here we knew it was going to be something different after we arranged it in the proper format. We Googled and we found out that there's 2D barcode representation called the GS1 matrix. So this is just that. This is a GS1 matrix. We could identify that by seeing 2 solid lines and then 2 alternating lines, and put it in a data matrix decoder online portal. Just put the screenshot of it in, and we got indigo. So this was encrypting all the colors. Now we will move on to how we got the button presses, which Sumi can handle. All right.
Yes, thank you, Hassan. So now that we had all the colors for the button presses, we had to focus on the remaining clues which pointed towards the button presses now that we had the colors. So when we split the chassis of the gear of the spinner, we found 3 gear-looking plates, which kind of gave us the idea that it will have to be spun in a certain way to be aligned and to give us the button presses. And they had 1s and 0s on them, which clearly represented on and off symbols. So the middle plate was the reference plate. It had a 0-degree line on it. The 0-degree line represents that this is the line where the other lines would have to match for us to get the final flue. And it also had 2 arrows on it, which represented the direction of turning of both the upper and the lower plates. So if we go to the next slide, we can see in what way the plates were turned. So when we had the disk 1 overlapped with the reference plate, we saw that they formed a 90-degree, and this 90-degree was clearly shown on the smaller arrow as a reference. So when it was turned clockwise, as the arrow suggested by 90 degrees, it perfectly aligned, which gave us a confirmation. Then we moved on to disk 2, whose line aligned perfectly with the base of the arrow, and the base of the arrow worked as a template of motion. So upon turning it, we got the final one, and we merged them together to get the thing. So a turn of 90-degree and 315 degrees negatively clockwise gave us the 2 disks overlapped. And the next image shows you the result. And now we have a very short video which will illustrate it for you. Yes, you can see a 90-degree turn, and this one, the line moves along with the arrow and perfectly aligns with the 0-degree line. And when you put them together, and view them from the top view, you also see that the power buttons align, which again reconfirmed our finding. And this showed that the buttons pressed were F, C, and B, since F, C, and B aligned with the 1s, and the buttons not pressed were A, D, E, H, and G. So that concludes our presentation, and we will open the room for judges to ask questions.
I have a question. I see that you write family Python script there. Why is that? Is that I know you guys are all computer science majors, but why did you put that on the slide?
Okay, so I can take that. At first, it started off as a joke. If you remember, a few months back, there was this joke by Dom Toretto, which was blowing up on TikTok and on Reels. And that's how we decided we'll call our group Family, because we also took part in the summer challenge, and that's when we made the name. And .py, since we often script in Python, and we thought it would be like cool and funny to have that in our name.
But you didn't use any Python in this, did you?
Oh yes, of course not. We didn't use any Python because we didn't feel the need to. We yes, the XOR might have been. I mean, we could have solved the XOR using Python, but we just did that manually since we found that easier. Anyways, yeah.
Great name. I approve.
Yeah, nice job.
Thank you.
One thing that I would like to ask is, because you're a team of computer science and the curriculum for computer science or your experience might be different from not being able to use the computer aided design or learning manufacturing materials and all of that. When participating in the final challenge of Hack3D, were there anything in particularly challenging to the team, or perhaps some members from the team already had prior 3D printing experience and working with these types of files?
So
yeah, I think
that one. Well, when we did the summer challenge, that's when we first started getting exposed to all these new softwares. I remember the first day when in the summers when the question got released, we were all searching around frantically to find the best free software that we could find to even view the files. So we were all completely new to this 3D environment. I ended up purchasing a printer a little after the summer project because of how cool I thought all of this was. So yeah, I mean, this time around it was a lot smoother. I feel like the summer challenge really gave us a good base and a good understanding of how all the tools work. And yeah, this time it was a lot smoother.
And just to add to that, as Hassan said, we had like almost no experience going into the summer challenge, but then we view this as sort of a way to challenge us to like get out of our comfort zone. And honestly, it has been a wonderful learning experience for all of us, and we've like really learned a lot. And yeah.
And a little funny thing to add to it is the reason we also named it PY is because during summer we expected to use some Python scripting to solve challenges, but then that was not the case, and it was completely about additive manufacturing, which led to a great learning experience for all of us.
Yeah, we could use more computer scientists in the field.
Yes, I agree.
As a follow-up question, since you explained that this was completely new to you and it was such a high learning experience, from the challenge itself, what was the most interesting thing about the challenge, and what were something that the team learned?
Yeah, I could take that one. I mean, we learned literally like everything from how to rotate in AutoFusion to how to master QR reconstruction, as we were joking about this. The challenges, like at first, on the first day, most clues came out to us at the first sight, but we were pretty sure that we were missing something. So we spent the next 2 days looking at the knob, looking at the red, black color. Was it a resistor? What could it mean? We looked at the resistance values. We went all measures to look for things that we overthought a lot. But in terms of learning every clue, every aspect of this competition has taught us new things, and the journey that we see is like our learning outcome has been so exponential that we wish to take part every year, since if you're allowed to, since it's just so cool. Like at first, the only reason we signed up for this because we thought it was like a hackathon or something, and but after doing the summer challenge, we are like, we have to do this, and I mean, I think we're addicted to such challenges. So yeah, thank you for this.
Sounds like it was fun. Sounds like you had fun.
All right, thank you so much for Team Family.py. For our last 6 team, we have Team Captain Redbeard and the Scurvy Scalawags, featuring Dio, Grant, and John.
Ahoy there. Hold up. Let me swap that around. There we go. All right. So we are Captain Redbeard and the Scurvy Scalawags. So first, a little bit about us. On the left here, we have Grant Parker. He is the namesake for our team, as you can see. He's Captain Redbeard. We're the Scurvy Scalawags. And so him and myself, I'm Theo Zinner. We work under Dr. Yampolsky at Auburn University, and we're focused on the sabotage of additive manufacturing. So, you know, both attack and defense sides of that. And then over here on the left, we have John David Sprunger, and he works with autonomous vehicles and wireless networking. And so we are mostly coming from a computer science side, and so we do not have a whole lot of experience with the CAD tools. I mean, we've done a little, but we're all studying computer science. So moving on, I have my results here, and we're going to get into, you know, why we think these are the answers. Our methodology started with a breadth first approach. So we went and looked at each facet, both, you know, literally and figuratively in the file, and tried to map out what all the problems were before trying to solve them. This way we could be methodical and work through all of the problems. And, you know, we had a whole lot of failed attempts, and I'm going to talk about some of the funny ones at the end. But for right now, we're going to talk about how we got to the answers we did. So we started with what color all the bubbles were. We just worked our way around from A to H. It seemed like the simplest way to go. So I'll get right into it. And really for this, the most important tools, we use SolidWorks, by the way, for most of it, was the isolate and hide features, because they allowed us, some of the bubbles had an outer shell that we had to put away. So if we could isolate the bubble and then hide it, we were able to see everything else. Later, we used Fusion 360. So for the first one, we decided it was orange because we saw this hexagon shape, and it had FFA 500. This is a hex code, as we guessed from the hexagon, and sure enough, we got orange. For the next one, we saw encryption, and this one actually stumped us for a while. So what we did is we saw this, but we first tried to put the pound sign in, but we knew that wasn't enough bits, so we added some zeros. That didn't work. So what we eventually did was just went to our old standby, which is using a hex editor on the file. And sure enough, in the header, we found this key down here. So using an online tool, I believe the link might be in my report, we were able to decrypt this message, and it came out to, when put into plain text, wavelength of 400 nanometers. And so we used our best friend Google, found out that's violet. The next one, now this one was kind of cool. It was, we had to enhance a couple times, zoom in a whole lot. So first I saw this S and V. I had no idea what that was. I saw an origin, so we calculated those distances. And then once we saw, I believe other teams already covered this well, but it had a hue with an angle. That was 174. We used another online tool to cover. It was teal, or we believe teal. Some said cyan, but I think this is the shade up here because it's a HSV color. The next one is blue. And so this one, we used the glass tool to see through. We saw this little bird who's, you know, famous for spreading misinformation, so we didn't want to let him out. So, you know, kept the glass around him. But all the logos are blue. We even got the values from MS Paint, the best tool known to humankind for image editing. All right, this one, it was pretty straightforward. We saw the XOR, so we went ahead and did the operation, and we ended up with 255.00. So that's 255 on red. So we think this one is red. Yellow. Okay, this is one of my favorite ones. So We had to look up some corporate iconography. It took me the longest time to find this one was Best Buy. And then like before, we did all of the hex values in MS Paint. And what I thought was really funny is that the shell one is really close to McDonald's. So I think, we're going to have a news headline, Big Mac versus Big Oil. They're going to sue them about the color. Now green, this one really stumped us. So I wrote a haiku, and so I'll just read it right now. Freshness, growth, mellow, calm green energy envy, environmental. So green felt right for this. Okay, and this one took us a minute, but we first, I saw all the boxes and it reminded me of a paper I had read before from Dr. Gupta's team. This is a particular interesting paper. I don't know if you can see in the tiny text, but I have the citation right there. And in this one, if you rotate it right, you can actually get a QR code, or it's a data matrix 16 by 16. Now we had some, I'll go in later, what our other approaches for this was, because we weren't originally able to scan it with our phones. It might've just been the way I was holding it. But thanks to, the research put out by Dr. Gupta's team, we were able to figure out that it says, I am indigo. And now I'm going to give it over to John David, we talked about shape, or what is it, pressed or not pressed, and, which of the colors of the rainbow. He was a valedictorian of his preschool class, and he majored in shapes and colors. So he is an expert. John David?
Yep, I'm here. I assume y'all can y'all hear me?
We sure can.
Cool. Yep. So for the pressed or not, so a lot of other teams used the arrows that were present on it, and we saw those, of course, and we also saw, of course, the ones and zeros and all that good stuff. So really, I just loaded into Fusion 360, hid the used the, it made it so I could see the hidden edges as well, and just started, rotating the different plates around. So yeah, you can see it like the top left. That's kind of what I was working with. And really all I did was I took the top one and just rotated it such that the two power symbols lined up. And now I would not have stopped here. I would have very likely gone for the rotated them with the arrows, but I didn't, because when we were going over this, trying to figure out what was going on, Theo loaded it up into Cura Slicer. And so it ended up that 3 of the balls, I'm pretty sure that little yellow bit in the bottom right is just
that's from C, I believe.
Yeah, probably the one with the little, maybe a little label on it or something. Anyway,
yeah.
What we saw when we were looking at the layers is that the 3, like when I just, simply rotated the top one a little bit to line up, is that the ones that had 1s pointed at them and the bottom right little picture, so you can see the 1s in the, bottom left, bottom right, and top left, that those 3 1s, eyes, whatever, actually lined up with the 3 balls that were, that Cura saw were solid. And so when Cura went to slice it, it was like, oh, I should totally fill these in. And so that is how we came to the conclusion that we're going to be the outlier here, that it's actually, what is it?
A, B, and E are not pressed.
Right.
They are solid. Oh, and to further support it, you see the central boss or the bearing, whatever you want to call it, on the right side here. We have red on the bottom. And that told us that, oh yeah, this side doesn't move, the top moves. It's also, if y'all ever seen, what's that movie, A Christmas Story, where he's got the cipher, we figured that was the natural way to hold something like this. So it made that, in conjunction with Cura, made us think it's definitely those 3 that are not pressed.
Right, because why would you press? Really, the justification is like, why would you press in something that has already been printed into the model? So yeah, that's our justification for why A, B, and E are not pressed and all the rest are pressed, because Cure is not going to print out anything inside those little sphere receptacle holder things. And so, you would get your little silicone thing and pop them in. So, yep.
All right. So, and here is the next thing. We had to figure out which was the mystery color. Now, from before, we knew that teal, we actually had a meeting that was, pretty long, not that long, but longer than it should have been, where we Googled what were the colors of the rainbow to be sure. And, we found that teal does not really belong. Furthermore, we found these arrows on the central slice. So this one in the left is pointing at orb C in the default configuration. And because it had this symbol, you can see it on the right side picture of a notch being taken out of a square. We believed it says like one out of many. It is the odd orb out. Furthermore, the other arrow that rotates around passes every orb but C. So that tells us it's those are the colors of the rainbow. And so now we're going to get into the bloopers, and these are, some of our harebrained ideas. I believe one of them was that, so if you go back here, we have red and black, and then you have zeros and ones. We thought that, the whole thing could be a stepper motor. And so this signifies positive and negative, and these are which coils are active. And so I made everybody watch a video on stepper motors. But we learned a whole lot about our 3D printers, but I don't think that really got us anywhere. But then my favorite one is the first time I found this data matrix, and I tried the QR code like I'd read about in Dr. Gupta's paper, but it wasn't working. So I thought, okay, maybe it's just in binary. So I went ahead and I translated it into binary. I used Excel, and then I put it into ASCII in all 4 directions. All of them gave me nothing except one direction gave me this text here, and it translated from Chinese on some of our apps into green potato. So at this point, we had to talk about, well, is it the color of a green potato? Is it just green? Does the potato matter? And that was probably my favorite part of the whole competition. Eventually, John David said, hey, no, let's try scanning it again. We put it in the proper orientation, and that time we colored it black. And it gave us I am indigo. Oh, we also did a whole lot of fidget spinner research. So, we were thinking about, okay, how do these things get pressed? Do they draw from a battery in the middle? And so forever, my YouTube is going to recommend me different fidget spinner reviews, and Amazon's trying to sell me fidget spinners. So thank you for that. And finally, do y'all have any questions for us?
Thank you so much, team.
Yeah, I have a question. How confident are you with your answers?
With the colors, I would say I'm 100% confident. With the others, I was honestly starting to think as y'all were with the pressed, y'all were trying to see how we think. Because I think, well, it's definitely possible our answer, but I've seen so many other good examples today. I was really impressed with some of those videos people put together. And so now I think I am not sure about that one.
So you think you get the colors right, but not the pressed?
Pressed, I'm about 50-50.
Okay.
And so if you want to see or I guess you have it in my report.
And you said you argued. I thought that was interesting. What did you argue about?
Well, so we would solve it. So we would first, we identified all the problems, and then we would go work individually, because that way, I think the first team even mentioned this, and I think it's a very good strategy, is you don't want to be thinking the same thing. And so if all of us come with our own opinions, we can argue for them, and in a constructive way, of course, but to figure out, whose hat holds the most weight. And that way we don't just have one opinion we all go with.
Good answer. Yeah. Thank you for the presentation. Very nice.
Thank you.
Who did the slides, by the way?
Oh, that was me.
It was a great presentation. one question I have is, you mentioned that the team was also new to the CAD, being
Yeah.
they studied something different, but being able to make it so far into the final challenge and passing through the qualifying challenge, I'd like to understand from the team, what would, if you had to describe one core value that the team had to help make them progress this far into the competition, what would that core value be that
What
pushed
core
the
value?
team so far?
I think that we value our individual ideas. And I think what we talked about before with, coming together and presenting, this is what I think, and then hashing it out. I think that's what really helped us.
And in terms of if there's a disagreement, how did you reach to a particular conclusion or
We would, I mean, we had 3 members, so we would usually, put it to a vote, but it didn't really come to that very often. It was more of when somebody shows up with something good, the other 2 go, oh yeah, that's the answer. Because there was a lot of weird ideas. I had the idea about the stepper motor, and I thought, yeah, that's really cool. All these desktop FDM printers have stepper motors in them, but I don't know.
Thank you so much. Thank you, team.
Thank you.
Thank you for presenting.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, let's see.
And with that, that is all 6 teams' presentation. So thank you so much to each of the team. I think this year with each team, everybody did a great job in the presenting, and it might be hard for the judges to determine the winners. But we will now break with the judges for the deliberation, and for each team, the winners will be announced later this evening on the CSAW platform in the auditorium at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time. So there will be a main CSAW award ceremony where we'll be presenting the winners of each competition. With that said, I know because a lot of you come from different areas around the world, there might be an issue with the time difference. So if that is an issue with attending the award ceremony, let me know prior and we can make the proper arrangement. But the award ceremony will be set on the CSAW platform later this evening at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time. So with this, I'd like to thank everybody for presenting and becoming a finalist for the Hack3D competition. I hope you had as much fun as the organizers who made the competition possible. Thank you for our 3 judges for agreeing to participate in the Hack3D competition and judging our teams, and all of the organizers and NSF for sponsoring the competition.
Thank you. It's been an honor. It's really cool what everyone's done and very clever way to discover these problems.
All right. Does any of the finalist teams have any questions before we break?